Yo, what's going on guys? Mush back at it with my final video covering the Steam Winter Sale, and in this video I want to go over 10 of my personal favorite games that have pretty solid discounts on them. Now I believe with every single one of these games I haven't mentioned them in a previous video, so all of these are fresh titles, some of them more well known, others not so much, but all of them are great deals. And no, I won't be mentioning The Witcher on here, so you guys are saved from that nonsense. But without further ado, let's get right into this. Starting off with the first game, I have to give a mention to Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which is only 20% off, but they've reduced the base price of this game to $20, so 20% off means you get it for $16, and that's still a very good price for Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which is a game that did have a ton of controversy surrounding it, but when you look at the game for what it is a fantastic open-world action-adventure stealth game. And I know some harp on the story that Metal Gear Solid 5 has. Yes, it doesn't have the long cutscenes and the big budget cutscenes of a Metal Gear Solid 4, but there's still quality world building present in Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. It's just presented in a different way. But I can say that where MGS5 shines is from a gameplay department. A lot of franchises, when they take the shift to an open world, they kind of make that transition very poorly. Metal Gear Solid 5 is one of those games where the open world greatly complements the stealth gameplay, and it just makes it a better game overall. You've also got a lot of content in the game, and by the way, this game is super easy to run on PC. For being a good-looking game, it's very easy to get high performance on this game. The Fox engine is just really well made, and $16 is a pretty solid pickup. Now, you can also buy the Metal Gear Solid 5 The Definitive Experience, which includes Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, a bunch of add-on content, and MGS5, so that's something to look at as well. I also do want to give a mention to Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which is 75% off for $7.50. That's another great game. A very different game than your traditional MGS game. It's an action game by Platinum, kind of short, not very focused on the story, but it's a lot of fun. That's $7.50, so you should check that out if you haven't also. Moving right along, a lot of you guys mentioned this deal to me, and I haven't covered it yet somehow, and that is Dark Souls 3, 75% off for $15. That's a great price for Dark Souls 3. At this point, that's probably the price it should be. It released almost 2 years ago. We're just 4 months shy of it being a 2-year-old game, but it's still a game that's held up in terms of pricing. And yeah, as far as Dark Souls go, if you've played the games, you know what to expect in Dark Souls. I thought Dark Souls 3 was a really good game. I thought it was the pinnacle for the Dark Souls franchise. I didn't personally think Bloodborne was a better game, but Dark Souls 3 is also really good. Some great boss fights, great atmosphere. Just what you would expect out of a Dark Souls game, nothing revolutionary, but it doesn't need to be. Dark Souls is a very polished and well-made action RPG, and if you've yet to try the series, you can start off with Dark Souls 3, no problem. There is also the Dark Souls 3 Deluxe Edition, which includes the base game and the Season Pass, but it's priced very highly at $38, so I would just stick to getting the base game. $15 is a great price for it. Moving along, Mass Effect The Collection, 75% off for $8.74. This gets you Mass Effect as well as Mass Effect 2 Digital Deluxe Edition, and these two games are both great. Mass Effect at this point hasn't aged all too well. I played that game a couple of years ago, and I was even getting a little bit frustrated by it. Some of the driving mechanics are pretty poor. Visually, it's not all too good, but it's still a pretty good RPG, and Mass Effect 2 is still a phenomenal game. Mass Effect 2 is up there with my favorite games of all time. It is just such a well-made game. It took everything great about the first Mass Effect and then just refined the third-person shooting gameplay, and it has everything you love out of a great RPG and everything you love out of a great third-person shooter, so I just thought Mass Effect 2 was just a phenomenal game. Excellent. And if you've yet to play the Mass Effect games, the Mass Effect Collection obviously is a great way to get started, and then you can check out Mass Effect 3 as well on Origin, which I thought was a pretty good game too, albeit the lackluster ending, but nonetheless, that was an okay game too. Mass Effect 2, however, is in my opinion, and most gamers' opinion, the pinnacle for the franchise. And we won't talk about Mass Effect Andromeda, so let's move on from that. Next up, we have Rise of the Tomb Raider 20-year Celebration Edition, 67% off for $19.79, so a little bit expensive for this one, but Rise of the Tomb Raider is a fantastic game. If you played the Tomb Raider reboot from 2013, it literally improves upon that game in every area, in my opinion. A better story, better world, more variety in the gameplay. I just thought this is everything that a sequel should be, and this 20-year Celebration Edition also includes the Season Pass, so you've got a lot of extra content on top of the base experience too. There's even a VR component to it. I know that's not going to be up everybody's alley, but Rise of the Tomb Raider was a great game. It looks great on PC. Again, a little bit steep of a price point, but in my opinion, it is well worth that. Moving on, a fantastic deal is available for Dishonored, 75% off for just $2.50. Alternatively, you can buy the Dishonored Definitive Edition, includes all of the DLC. That's a whopping $10 though, so I would just stick to the base game if you've never played Dishonored. Dishonored. $2.50 for it is fantastic. It is a bit older of a game, so this price isn't anything crazy. But what's great about Dishonored is that it was very good design-wise without being a game that relied on technical achievements. So it's a game that's aged very well. Going back and playing it today, you can still have a lot of fun with it. And the gameplay to Dishonored is great. It's got a great setting, a pretty good story, and very varied gameplay. You can go through and play it as an action-oriented title, or you can play it more as a stealth experience. Either way, the game is great. Obviously, there is a Dishonored 2, and that game, in my opinion, is better than the first Dishonored. However, it did have some performance issues on PC, but it does look like that's been remedied. That is $20. It's 50% off. And there is a Dishonored Complete Collection, which includes Dishonored, Dishonored 2, and Dishonored Death of the Outsider, which was a standalone expansion to Dishonored 2. That's $32. Kind of expensive, but all the games are pretty good, so maybe that's something to look at. At the very least, if you've yet to play Dishonored, check out the first game for just $2.50. Moving on, this is a game that I really wanted to mention because it's a game that so many of you guys probably don't even know exists, and that is Prince of Persia. Now, it's been years since I've played this game, so forgive me on my memory if I'm a little bit shoddy, but this was a game put out by Ubisoft back in 2008, and I played it around the time of release, and I really enjoyed it. Now, I remember some very noticeable issues with the controls and the camera. However, I think the positive of this game outweighs the negative. This is another game that, looking at it, it's aged very well because of the great art style. It's got this great watercolor look, and the game is fantastic to look at. The gameplay's solid. I remember the story being pretty good, and best of all, the price is great. 66% off for just $3.39. Prince of Persia is a franchise that's really been forgotten about, but this game I enjoyed, and I would recommend you guys to check it out. Moving on, a game that was an absolute financial disaster for the developers, Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. This game was such a big budget game that even though it sold alright, it actually made the studio defunct. It's really sad because Kingdoms of Amalur is a great open world RPG. Released back in 2012, this is a game that does not rely on amazing world building and storytelling. Rather, it offers you fun content. What's great about Kingdoms of Amalur is the gameplay. A lot of open world RPGs kind of have slower paced gameplay. Amalur is not like that. A lot of people compare the gameplay to something like God of War or Devil May Cry, and I agree with that. It's very fast paced, very action oriented, and it's just a blast to play. It's unfortunate that this couldn't develop into its own franchise. I understand why it couldn't because it was such a disaster, but you should definitely check it out, and it's 75% off for $5. Next up is a game that I've always tried to sell people on, and just looking at it, it's a game that's very hard to sell, and that's Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Danganronpa is a game that I absolutely adore, and right when you look at it, you're gonna think, oh my god, what is this? It looks so zany, but let me explain. Danganronpa is a visual novel that has more gameplay than a lot of other visual novels, so you do get kind of both elements, and you play as a high school student trapped inside of a high school with a bunch of other students, and the story of the game is that the only way to escape this high school is to kill one of your classmates and not get caught by the other classmates. So yeah, explaining the game doesn't really do it justice, but I'm telling you guys, just give it a chance, and you are in for one hell of a ride. The storytelling is so engaging, it's such an engrossing game, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It is a little bit expensive, 40% off for $12. Alternatively, you can get the Danganronpa 1 and 2 bundle, 46% off for $21.58. Would highly recommend to play the first Danganronpa before jumping into Danganronpa 2. And then there is a third Danganronpa game that was released this year, and that game was more of an original story, but that one is $45, so I'd recommend to start off with Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. I'm telling you guys, looks a little bit zany at first, looks like a game that's not going to be up everyone's alley, but if you can get past the over-the-top presentation, there is an amazing story here. Next up, we've got Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut, 85% off for $3. What can I say about Deus Ex Human Revolution? I've talked about this game so many times, and at this price point, it is an absolute bargain. Now, this game obviously does have a sequel in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, but I think most gamers would agree in saying that Deus Ex Human Revolution is the better game. It's the cheaper game. It's the game that runs better. So I just have to recommend this game way over Deus Ex Mankind Divided. It's also got the better story. Mankind Divided is an okay game. I actually did enjoy it more than most people, but Human Revolution stands out to me as the better game of the two. And if you just want to get into Deus Ex, I think Human Revolution is a great starting point. Again, pretty easy to run, and the Director's Cut does have some added bonuses, dev commentary, things like that. So pretty good, and for $3, it's a must-buy. And finally, the last game is another title that I've talked about frequently. It's Enslaved Odyssey to the West Premium Edition, 75% off for $5. This was a game that was released on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 years ago, I think back in 2010, and those that played it really enjoyed it. It was by Ninja Theory, and they've done some really solid solid games. However, it wasn't a game that garnered much traction, and I never expected it to come to PC. But lo and behold, back in 2013, Ninja Theory and Bandai Namco decided to bring the game over to PC, and it runs pretty well. The game itself is a post-apocalyptic single-player action-adventure game. It centers around two characters, Monkey and Trip, and they are great contrast to one another. Their interactions are hilarious, and unlike a lot of post-apocalyptic games, Enslaved Odyssey to the West, just by looking at it, you can tell it's a very colorful and vibrant game, and the world design is awesome. I wish we would have seen a sequel to this game, but that never came to fruition. However, this is a game I always like to recommend, and 75% off for $5 is a good pickup on this one. So that wraps up the final video on the Steam Winter Sale. I hope you guys have enjoyed these series of videos, and I thought this was a good way to round things out, to look at 10 of my personal favorite games, and games that I think are very good and have very good discounts on them. As always, guys, if you have a request for a future video, you can leave that in the comment section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.